Hi, you guys, and welcome to the Lead with Love show. I'm your host, Amanda Haywood, and now we're tapping into win your inner war with peace and how to show up as the loving woman, mother, and wife that you are. So, just to give you a brief introduction, I'm on a quest to be a better parent at this very moment or in this show, and I'm also on a quest to not blame my husband when I don't show up as a loving parent, and at the same time still try to increase my ability to co-parent with him. So what I mean by this is Lead with Love is about leadership, and leadership is about leading yourself. That's it. It's not about leading other people. So if there's one thing I've learned is that when I'm focusing on what my husband needs to improve, he's not. So ladies, number one rule is stay on your own turf, right? Because if you're focusing on it, you can be damn sure he's not. So that's not going to get you anywhere. Okay, so today we have with us a very special guest. It's Dr. Patti Britton, and she's a clinical sexologist, but she's way more than that. She is really a pioneer in sex coaching. She co-founded the Sex Coach U, which is the world's leading or the best accredited sex training center for sex coaches. So I'm super excited to have her here. I just want to tell the audience why I brought you on the show, Patti. So before we jump in and just pick your brain with all the great questions that we have, this is one of my thoughts. So children are like little radars that pick up everything energetically. They even pick it up before we consciously do. So me and my husband, there can be bad vibes and they react to it immediately. Like before we even know that we're having like bitchy and grunt, like, bad energy. So we need to clear that space. And I find that being able to talk about our sexual desires and our sexual limitations or traumas or our insecurities around, it is really about insecurities, right? Like basically we'll always fear that he just wants us for sex or whatever that is, and when we make that up. So if we can be honest about that, we'll clear the energy really quickly and really efficiently so that we can be better parents. So those are my thoughts. Welcome to the show, Dr. Patti.
Thank
So excited to
you
have
so
you
much. And it's so interesting. So much of my work in the world is about empowering the self, and that our sexuality and our sexual expression is part of the essence of being human. And so I'm so grateful that you're integrating a conversation around sex and sexuality into this discussion, because that sense of taking care of self first and then coming from your own empowerment and leading toward what you want. This is the secret of the secret, isn't it? When that phenomenon happened, I used to tell my clients, and I still do, it's 5 little words. Focus on what you want. Stop the complaining, stop the blaming, stop the shaming, and just focus on what you want. And that means you're coming from your power source. So I love this. This is great.
Yeah, and really our leadership is being tested when it comes to how we show up, saying what we want, what we desire, and what we're insecure about in terms of sexuality. So that is really our main leadership test. Of course, we're also being tested by husbands and children. But I really find that in the intimate space of sexuality, that is where we're being tested the most, because nothing hits deeper to home, and nothing can be more scary to open up for, and more relieving, or just a relief to do. So really, I think it hits to the core of leadership.
Well, it's also, I know we're not like following a script today, so we're having this really incredible dialogue. And part of what I want to say is that when we touch our sexuality, I don't mean touch ourselves. I mean, when we have connection with our sexuality, and when we show up empowered sexually, we also are in touch with not only our power, but our vulnerability. And that vulnerability is where our strength comes from, because there's an authenticity built into that, right? Yeah. It's about self-integrity. So there's so much to talk about. We're not going to have enough time to get to it all.
No, we're not. Okay, so let's dive into that connection that you can create with your husband in the intimate atmosphere. Sphere is probably the right word. So the power of honesty, radical honesty, coupled with vulnerability for it, because that can create such a deep connection. And you can just remember the moments in time and you just connect immediately. So how do you help clients with that?
Well, I have a million thoughts swimming around my brain to respond to that because it's really the core of my life's work as a clinical sexologist. And that's not just empowerment focused, but it's actually, as the founder of this new field or profession or industry known as sex coaching, which I created in 1993, I married the what of sex therapy or sexology or the study of human sexual behavior and its impact with the how of life and personal coaching. And so there is a drive toward, what are your goals? What do you want? And in order to know what you want, you have to know yourself first. And so a lot of the work involved for women in particular, especially in long-term committed relationships, and I know we're talking very heteronormatively about
No, we don't
male,
need to.
female
We don't need to.
marriage, but it's any relationship that has sex as a component of it. There is an intimacy that can or cannot be formed. Sex does not necessarily mean intimacy. Intimacy is really emotional vulnerability and being seen, being heard, being known. Into me, you see. I love that definition of intimacy. And
Yeah.
there's something that women in particular, and I know we're talking to women all around the world as we speak on this summit. There are some universalities, and I think there's a sense that women are the caregivers and the caretakers, especially if you're mom, right? And usually we're at the end of the serving line. Isn't that correct? I mean, this is the classical definition of codependence, which is take everybody else's needs and put them ahead of yours, and then maybe you'll get to meet your needs. But in order to meet your needs, you need to actually know what you need and know what you want. And that means you have to know yourself first. And I'm a big proponent of know yourself inside and out. And I mean that literally.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm
Yeah.
a sex doctor. I
Yeah.
mean, take time to look at your body. One of the healing methodologies for body shame, and there's so much body shame for women around their sexual anatomy, around their breasts, around their form, their shape, whatever it is that they're looking at in a mirror. There's a need to really own and claim our own uniqueness, our beauty, and our capacity for pleasure. And this is the thing that I think women kind of fall off track about. And I could talk about men as well. There's a whole other dynamic working for the males who are their
Yeah.
partners if they're hetero. But that is this sense of taking care of the other, and my needs don't matter. The same theme I was talking about a few minutes ago. And knowing what you need and knowing what you want and desire, and then claiming it. And knowing how to articulate that. And that's not easy for a lot of people, males or females, but I think particularly for women. How do I ask for what I want and not come across as a bitch, or I'm complaining, or I'm criticizing him? Because that's going to shut down sex like nothing else. Men they don't do well with criticism. And
No, yeah,
honestly,
for
most
sure.
of us don't either,
No,
as
true.
females, identified females, cisgendered females. So there's something about
Okay.
that openness to claiming ourselves and to opening to authentic, radical, honest communication. Like, no, over here, if he's attempting to perform a sexual act of some sort, let's say he's rubbing her clitoris and giving her manual stimulation. Remember, I'm a sex doctor talking about sex and sexual pleasure, and it doesn't feel good. Or this couple is really clueless about what foreplay might involve or how to get the engines running. That kind of feedback, if it's done properly and with compassion and not in a criticizing way, can change the dynamic of a sexual relationship. So I think you're ready to ask or say something. I'm going to pause.
Yeah, no, yeah, a lot of things going through my mind too. So I have
Yes.
an explicit question for you. Okay.
Good.
So I always get off, or used to get off, on like masochistic fantasies. And I really want to
Okay.
move into getting more turned on by love sexually. So there's like a distinction or a separation between sex and love in my life. And I know, or I don't know that it does, but I was sexually abused when I was a kid.
Right.
And it only lasted 30 minutes, but it's been with me my entire life. And it's in the same theme of my fantasies. And I get that it's fun to do kinky role play and all that, but I want to make love to my husband. So I don't have a problem being honest about all those fantasies, but I have a problem being more intimate. And he's like, well, that's fun, babe, but where am I in all of this? You know, you're six dudes or whatever it is. and it's just
Got
been a
it.
habit. And I want to reach climax without it being that I'm tired of that fantasy. It's not fun anymore. And it's more like creating a disconnect between me and my husband.
It is. Now, let me say something that may be shocking to you, that most of how sex runs is based on fantasy. And what I mean by that is that, and this is kind of controversial, the way we're showing up sexually with a partner, we're usually in our head part of that time. It's also the culprit to why we don't experience pleasure. So if you can get out of your head and focus on what's going on in your body, which often means the gateway is breathing. So getting past this block, neck is the block. So neck up is the mind, neck down is the body. It's also other things. So if you can bypass the block and get into the body and begin to feel pleasurable sensations. I have this little acronym, FOPS, focus on pleasurable sensations. And by the way, when you focus on pleasurable sensations, your mind is being given a job to feel, oh, I feel the warmth of his hand against my buttock. Oh, I feel the pressure of his body on my thighs. I can feel his breath. I can hear him breathing. I can smell his whatever you're smelling about him, his breath, his maybe the pheromones are kicking in. Maybe you're smelling his aftershave or that manly scent that's so natural. You're looking at him. You're having all of your senses evoked and awakened, and you're present in your body. When you're in fantasy, even though it's kicking in, because there's a lot of neuroscience about how orgasm works, and I'm not going to give you parts of the brain or the neural pathways and all that today, but we know that the brain is engaged in a sexual act, and how that brain gets engaged by accelerating excitement, by bringing fantasy in, may also be the block that you are experiencing and being present with your beloved, I'll say that, and your sweetie, so that you can be with your sweetie. But even when you're present in your body with your sweetie, the mind doesn't turn off. What it does is it goes, oh, I wonder if he's going to put his hand here. I wonder if he'll kiss me. I wonder if I lean in and I go like that. So even then, we're fantasizing about what's the next act, what's the next step, what's the next behavior, what's going to happen next. So fantasy is not bad in itself, and it can be actually the greatest antidote to not enough arousal. That's part of what happens, is you're not getting enough stimulation and or arousal. And I'm not saying it's mentally, because it may be tactile. It might be that what he's doing to your body isn't really kicking in enough. It may not be a high enough rev for you to feel excitement and ecstasy. And I'm going to dare to say, you probably haven't healed this past trauma, okay? So one of the interesting things in our world today is that this world of BDSM, this life choice for many people, whether they're born this way, they're oriented toward it, or they decide to explore the 50 Shades way of living and expressing. It's not just about sex, it's about erotic power dynamics. What happens is sometimes it's curative, meaning that sometimes these childhood traumatic events can be reenacted so that you, the adult, are in charge and you reverse the outcome. Sometimes I have my clients rewrite their story. I ask every client to write his, her, their sexual story, and I have prompt questions. And then sometimes when I'll have a client who say, well, hello, Dr. Patti, my name is Sarah, and I'm a victim of sexual abuse. And then 3 sentences later, oh, and just to remind you, I'm a victim of sexual abuse. And I say, stop. Let's tell a different story. Are you willing to do that? And sometimes even writing it or acting that out with the safety of the netiquette or the protocol of a BDSM experience.
What is BDSM?
BDSM is bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, sadomasochism. Now, out of BDSM, what you are saying is you've been leaning on the victimization. I'm going to use that word with big air quotes, the masochistic, you said. So that means that in a way you're victimized. You don't have power to assert yourself. As a kid, we don't. That's why this is something that's held not in
Interesting.
positive regard, because we're powerless. And when we're an adult and we're engaging in these same patterns of behavior that were troubling, if not traumatic in the past, suddenly we are in charge of that experience, and we heal that by changing the narrative, by changing actually not just the narrative, but the somatic experience. The brain doesn't know the difference between rehearsal and actual experience. And energetically, we're changing the energetics of our experience. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It really does. So to reprogram your brain, actually.
And your behaviors and your body and your energetic patterns, because they're there, they're kind of locked in. And, you know, the truth lives in the body.
Yeah. So it's kind of like like I've lost my old sexuality and my old way of, reaching climax. And it was fun. It was just like these fantasies, right? But now I'm like neutral, and I need to put in something else and build that up. And I just want it to be more towards love. So we kind of lose what do I get turned on by now? And I just don't want to go back, because it was fun while it lasted, but it's time to move on. I want to.
Well, also, I want to say that sex doesn't necessarily equal intimacy. We know that. We can have an F buddy or a best friend with whom we're also a play partner of any kind. But the reality is that when love shows up in a sexual experience, it's grander, it's deeper. There's something else that's resonating within the self. And maybe one of the ways to bring that present, and I'm going to coach you, what I do, to try out something, and all of our people who are watching this can benefit from it too. I'm a big fan of the simplicity of tantric methods. And one of the tantric methods is putting your hand on your heart and then putting it on the heart of your partner. And then holding each other's hearts and looking into each other's eyes, left eye to left eye, holding that gaze. So holding it for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, which can take an eternity to some people, and really connecting. Because this connects the feeling side of our brain. Left eye to left eye gaze.
If you're left-handed, it's right eye, right?
No, it's left eye, because we're talking about the two hemispheres of the brain. The right hemisphere runs the left side of the body, and vice versa.
No matter what, of course.
No matter what handed you are. And so left eye gazing, when we connect left eye to left eye, we're actually activating probably limbic brain activity, the feeling, emotional part of the brain, the more sensing part of our bodies, rather than the tactical, literal, lineal, logical, reasoning side. And so if you want to solve a math problem and figure out how much the tip should be at the restaurant, that would be left brain. If you want to begin to move into feeling a connection, you're probably going to be in the right brain. And that could help you. And you could say, you could say words of love that evoke something. I was just watching a movie the other day and looking at, well, actually, I was thinking about the Golden Globes, and Sandra Oh, who was the co-host of it, was talking about how in Asian culture, it was not common to say, I love you. And I was looking at a documentary as well, talking about that. So when we say, I love you, there's something else going on. We're claiming, it's that claiming it, isn't it? And we're actually, it's not what we say. I always say to my clients, it's not the words, it's the way we deliver the words. It's the energy and the emotion. It's the boats, we're sending little boats out, a little battalion of boats to someone else. And it's carrying what it is we want to convey. And that can be our love. So try that.
I so agree. Thank you, Dr. Patti. So moving on, because we have so much we want to help the audience with, and apart from just helping me, what are the most common emotions that damages or shuts down sexual expression?
Well, I've written a lot about this, and I've had thousands of clients and students. And I think that fear, guilt, and shame are still the triumvirate. And afraid to make a change, afraid to ask for what you want, afraid to try new things, afraid you may fail. Sometimes afraid you may not fail. You know, if we enact a fantasy that we've been holding for 20 years, for example, and we rely on that fantasy to go over the waterfall, I call it, to feel our orgasm release, then we may not want to act on that fantasy and give that up. Because if we give it up, either it becomes reality and not a fantasy anymore, or we might like it, and then that's really what we're getting as feedback, that this is where we need to go, or we may hate it. And then we can't use it as a fantasy anymore. Okay?
Exactly.
This is the danger of acting on fantasies.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
you know,
good
that
point.
fear really becomes a blocking emotion. Guilt, I tell people, unless, you know, you pulled out a gun and you shot somebody, guilt, useless emotion. But the
Yes.
big one is shame, and I call it toxic shame. And we've known about this since the 1970s, when the codependency movement and the 12-step healing revolution really kicked in. John Bradshaw wrote about Healing the Shame That Binds You, I think was the first book I ever read on that. And toxic shame is really, you know, it's not, I'm not guilty about what I did. I'm just steeped in shame. It's a self-loathing kind of thing. And it can come from the outside, could come from parents, it could come from religious messages, it could come from culture, it could come from a lover or a not so great a friend who says, you know, ew, you, blah, 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 blah. On the, you know, grade school courtyard while you're playing basketball. But that kind of shame grows inside and it festers and it becomes really poison.
Yeah.
So exhuming that toxic shame, removing it, touching into it, first you got to know you have it, then you have to really kind of move it around and then get rid of it. Yeah. And I, you know, I have a system for how I help my clients remove or resolve or overcome almost 50 different sexual concerns or issues. But shame is really I'd say the biggest issue that most women in particular have to face. And especially about body image. Body image for women is a really, really negative challenge to begin to say, like I was saying to you, you know, say to your partner, I love you. Look seriously eye to eye, hold hearts, breathe together. If you can synchronize breathing and say, I love you, or I appreciate you for whatever it is that allows that feeling to begin to emerge and flow. But letting go of shame is essential, and looking at the image you see in the mirror and having shameful feelings. My breasts are too big, my breasts are too small. Oh, you know, I'm in my senior year, so I look in the mirror and go, oh my God, look at that. And, you know, and my friends go, what are you saying?
Yeah, stop saying that to yourself.
Yeah. So stop, you know, stop shaming yourself. Mm-hmm. And I had a wonderful mentor years ago, Dr. Albert Ellis, who was a very famous psychologist. And he used to write these books, and actually also was a musicologist. And he used to have these little phrases like, stop shoulding on yourself. Stop awfulizing things. and it really hit home. Isn't that great?
And so stop awfulizing things is good.
Stop
right?
awfulizing things.
Have trust.
Yeah, and look for the good. And don't should on yourself. That's part of where shame comes from, is when you're shoulding. SHOULDING.
Oh, should have.
Don't stop shoulding on your. I shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yeah, that's part of how we actually ignite and keep going that flame of self-loathing and self-shaming.
So, yeah, I don't think I have body shame, but I definitely have shame. So I go swimming in the morning naked all year round. And
great.
So, but I definitely have shame deeper down. I also read Brené Brown's book.
Shaming.
Great on shame. And I think I've been blaming, and I think shaming and blaming goes
together.
It does. And shaming, yeah. So
and
shame
complain. It's a threesome. Yeah. I once took a workshop. Years ago, I took this workshop, and the workshop had this really great workshop, half-a-day workshop in New York. And the woman who was teaching it said, and I'm going to give you a 7-day recipe, and I want you to go home and do this and see how much you really learned. I want for the next 7 days for you to stop complaining, blaming, and explaining. I can't live without explaining.
Yeah, like that's mind dumping on your husband. You mind dump onto him.
So imagine, even just giving up blame and complain will change your life.
I have that on my step
yourself.
7. It's no blaming or complaining. Like, and it's just for
Yeah.
24 hours. But I had a couple. No, I had a woman that was able to turn her relationship around in the most extreme way by just not complaining or blaming for 24 hours.
Exactly.
I was like blown away.
Exactly.
It's so extreme the change.
Exactly.
And
So
like,
here's the thing about blaming and complaining. My finger is pointing at you. What empowerment is about is your finger is pointing this way. And that's when you're willing to ask for what you want and need and claim yourself. That's what real empowerment is. And that's what real, authentic, radical, honest communication is based on.
yeah.
I teach I statements. I feel uncomfortable when you touch me there, that way, you might say to a partner. Or, I'm feeling I'm just a little disconnected. We're feeling not as close as we were last time we made love. Can we just hold each other I have a friend who you should know about, Dr. Stella Resnick, who has just written a very important new book, and it's an integration of neurobiology, neuroscience, positive sexuality, sex therapy, Gestalt, anything you can think of that's like the new work of science and adult attachment theory. And it's such an important body of work because part of it is bringing the body in. And when we hold a partner and we just put our hearts to each other, heart to heart, and we sustain a hug, our neurology and our physiology shifts just in silence. We don't have to say a word.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something about the body itself, bringing the body into the conversation, and sometimes too much talking.
Yeah, my husband, we figured out a long time ago that talking isn't that good for us. Only after intimacy and after sex, then we can start talking a little bit because it always goes wrong. But we hug, and he heals me, so we do that.
Beautiful.
So I definitely recommend that because
beautiful. It also helps the health of your blood. It raises hemoglobin in the blood.
It's way better than we always end up fighting when we start using words. So, not always, but yeah, it's like a minefield, and I know he feels that way too.
Yeah, beautiful.
So definitely. So, what else do we have on the list? Yes. What can the choice?
We have about 4 more hours.
There's so much. Yeah. Like there's so much I want to ask you, but I want to keep it also so that I know the audience can get something out of it. So what can the choice to make love, not war, really do for your relationship and how you lead your life?
It changes everything. There's what hits me is that love is an energy, and it's an energy field. And there are so many discussions happening in our world today around the power of love and what is love. And even I attended a conference recently where we learned the techniques of heart math, opening the heart, because the heart, this is what's so interesting, the heart is the other brain. We have 40,000 neurons in our heart. Wow. So if you think of it, we have a thinking heart and a feeling and a sensing heart. So when we are at war, we're shut down. Our other brain is closed off, and this is how we move through the world. So we need to clear and open that. And the other thing is that I just want to say to women who are watching and listening, I think part of it is we don't like ourselves when we're in an angry, warring mode. It's like
it makes it even more angry. That's the problem.
It does. It's selfish.
That's why we're pissed. We're pissed that we can't be loving because
that we can't be who we know we are. Essentially, the truth is, we're good people. We're loving people. We begin from a love space as humans, and then it all gets twisted and polluted, right? And so it's kind of like I can't be me if I have to defend myself, protect myself, duke it out and fight energetically, verbally, physically, whatever it is. And there's no flow. And so there's something so almost magical about letting that go and not needing to be right and not needing to be the winner, because you're going to be the winner if you open up your heart and you allow yourself to be that loving person that you know yourself to be. That's really the truth about it.
That's how you win the war, with peace,
it is.
Not with more war.
Exactly.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
So lovely talking to you, Dr. Patti.
Thank
You're
you.
really, it's amazing. And I know everybody I talk to know you, so I'm really
Thank you.
super honored to have you on the show.
Oh, thank
You're
you.
really
Me too. I love you. You're amazing. You just, there's something about you. Your authenticity shows up and shines in a way, and you have this, I don't, you have a way about you. So how fortunate for the people whose lives you touch as well. And what a great summit this is. So really,
It's an honor.
really
It's truly an
great thing
honor
that you're
to be
doing.
able to help people just by being honest. That's wow, amazing. So I want to just end this note with how can people go deeper with you? You have a free gift for the audience, right?
We
That
do.
they can.
We have a free ebook on female sexual pleasure. So be sure that you check out the link. And
Yep.
it's based on a program I made a long time ago. I interpreted the Kama Sutra for modern times, for our era today, pre Me Too movement. I'll say that.
Say
And
that
and
again.
it before the Me Too movement,
Oh,
this
okay.
is when I think we felt a little more relaxed about asking for what we want and being connected in a sexual way. But it's the ancient teachings. And so those teachings bear out today. And I made a 3 DVD program that's very long. I mean, we're talking like 6 hours on camera, running a workshop with real life couples.
Wow.
And then they
So
demonstrate,
generous.
you know,
Wow.
it's a really beautiful program. And then I took the second one called For Her Pleasure, and I created an ebook out of that. So it's really kind of like mastery of how does female sexuality work, and how do you really, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, how do you honor her as your beloved if you're the partner? Isn't that cool? So
It's
that's
so
my
cool.
gift. And people are also eligible to come to my own website at
Hmm.
drpattybritton.com. I offer once a week, I offer a few
Feel like the one.
complimentary sex coaching sessions. That's my pro bono work in the world. And
Wow.
they usually fill
Perfect.
up pretty fast. So you just have to find the little button and feel free to sign up and talk to me
That's
about
so generous. That's such an
it.
awesome
Thank
gift. So, ladies
you.
out there, you probably know this, but I'm going to tell it to you again or say it to you again. So, pick at least one expert and go deeper with them and try their work so you don't just watch the show. Take action. So, words are great, but only
Yeah,
when they lead to action. So, I
you're
definitely
right.
recommend Dr. Patti's. And we're going to be talking about it in the Facebook group. So, I'm going to be reading the ebook
Yeah,
too. And if you really want to work, and you're also welcome to join the Facebook group, we have other coaches.
thank
We have
you.
Dr. Susan Campbell in there,
Yeah,
also pioneer in her field,
yeah,
and
yeah.
answering questions. So there's really no excuse, and it's all free. And it's all up to you guys out there to just take action and use the resources that are out there. That's the first step to taking responsibility, right?
Mm, that's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I look forward to that.
yeah, me too. I look forward to reading your ebook. Thank you so, so much. It was a
My
pleasure
pleasure.
talking to you today.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye, love. Namaste. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.